Imagine a continent scarred by atrocities, where millions perished under the weight of colonial rule, and justice remains elusive. Between the early 19th century and the wave of independence in the 1960s and 70s, European powers systematically committed crimes across Africa. These weren't isolated incidents, but a pattern of forced labor, enslavement, persecution, executions, bombardments, looting, and forced cultural assimilation. France alone occupied over a third of the continent, leaving a trail of over 2 million lives lost. This is a history of crime. It is a history of unpunished crime. The scale of colonial crimes is almost beyond comprehension. The sheer number of victims dwarfs many of history's most infamous atrocities. But beyond the numbers are individual stories of suffering, resilience, and a thirst for justice that remains unquenched. We begin our exploration with a chilling event that signaled a brutal shift in European rule, the Taviefe Massacre. In June 1888, in a small border town in what was then the Gold Coast, British colonial forces slaughtered an estimated 800 people. This massacre was not just a tragedy, it was a turning point, marking the end of an old political order and ushering in an era of unprecedented violence. The Taviefe Massacre remained absent from Gold Coast and Ghana histories for decades, a testament to the way colonial powers often suppressed or erased the evidence of their crimes. The silence surrounding it speaks volumes about the uncomfortable truths that many nations have been reluctant to confront. The Herero Genocide stands as one of the most horrific examples of colonial brutality. Beginning in 1904, in German Southwest Africa, escalating disputes led to a campaign of extermination against the Herero and Nama peoples. German colonial leaders, falsely claiming an uprising, sought permission from Kaiser Wilhelm II to unleash a brutal response. Lieutenant General Lothar von Trotha issued the Vernichtungsbefehl, an extermination order that replaced any pretense of negotiation with a policy of racial annihilation. The genocide resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of Herero and Nama people, a stain on German history that continues to demand acknowledgement and accountability. The Thiaroye Massacre is a grim reminder of the hypocrisy of colonial powers. On December 1, 1944, at a military camp near Dakar, Senegal, French soldiers opened fire on Senegalese riflemen returning from fighting for France in World War II. These men, who had risked their lives in the name of France, were demanding payment of wage arrears. Instead of receiving what they were owed, they were met with bullets, a brutal betrayal that exposed the deep-seated racism and exploitation at the heart of the colonial system. Goree Island in Senegal, often portrayed as a historical site of the slave trade, took on a new, darker role beginning in 1815. It was transformed into a slave trade hub, where millions of Africans were uprooted in shackles. Hundreds of thousands perished during the brutal voyage across the Atlantic, their lives reduced to mere commodities in the eyes of their captors. The island stands as a haunting monument to the inhumanity of the slave trade and the lasting trauma it inflicted on the African continent. The atrocities committed by French captains Voulet and Chenoine in Chad between 1899 and 1903 are a testament to the unchecked power and brutality of colonial officers. These men, already notorious for their violence during the conquest of the Mossi Kingdom, embarked on a reign of terror, marked by murder, rape, pillaging, and the burning of villages. In one particularly horrifying incident, colonial troops assassinated the Agwed, the military chief of Dokom, along with his men and more than 20 Islamic scholars, resulting in the deaths of over 75 people. European powers employed a diverse range of violent control mechanisms to maintain their grip on Africa. These included executions, prison encampments, forced removals, incarceration, penal labor, floggings, and amputations. These methods were not merely isolated acts of violence, they were systematic tools of oppression, designed to break the spirit of the African people and ensure their subjugation. The legacy of these colonial punishment systems extends far beyond individual acts of violence. They established power relations between imperial powers and colonized bodies, creating structural forms of control that continue to shape African societies today. These systems fundamentally alter the political, economic, and social structures of African nations, leaving a lasting impact that is still felt today. The demographic catastrophe caused by colonial rule is staggering. The 2 million deaths in French-controlled Africa alone represent a massive population loss, with generational consequences for economic development, social cohesion, and cultural continuity. The loss of so many lives robbed Africa of its potential, hindering its progress and leaving deep scars on its collective psyche. Africans today continue to demand recognition, reparations, and apologies from former colonial powers. The African Union has called for historical crimes, including slavery, colonialism, and racial segregation, to be formally recognized as crimes against humanity. These demands are not just about seeking financial compensation, they are about acknowledging the historical injustice and taking steps to heal the wounds of the past. Post-colonial and modern African institutions often carry the legacies of coloniality. Punishment and control mechanisms established during colonial times persist in contemporary governance structures, perpetuating cycles of oppression and inequality. Breaking free from these legacies is essential for building truly just and equitable societies in Africa. In Southwest Africa, now Namibia, German colonial rule transitioned to South African administration under League of Nations provisions. The region then fell under apartheid law in 1948, demonstrating how colonial violence evolved into systematic racial segregation. This continuity highlights the enduring impact of colonial structures and the ways in which they continue to shape the lives of Africans today. The Taviefe Massacre's omission from standard Gold Coast and Ghana histories represents a significant gap in colonial documentation. This absence likely stems from the fact that it occurred during the ambiguous transition period between pre-colonial and fully established colonial rule. The silence surrounding the massacre underscores the importance of uncovering and acknowledging the hidden histories of colonial violence. Colonial narratives often misrepresented the causes of violence. The 1904 Herero Uprising, for example, was announced to Berlin before any fighting occurred, suggesting that colonial authorities manufactured pretexts for extermination rather than responding to genuine threats. This manipulation of events highlights the need to critically examine colonial accounts and to seek out alternative perspectives. While slave raids in Chad during the early 20th century are documented, the records indicate that few slave raids have been fully documented, suggesting substantial gaps in the historical record regarding the full extent of forced labor and slavery practices. This lack of documentation makes it all the more important to continue researching and uncovering the hidden histories of colonial exploitation. The crimes of colonialism remain largely unpunished, a stark reminder of the enduring power imbalances that exist in the world today. As we reflect on this dark chapter in history, we must ask ourselves, what steps can we take to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated? How can we work towards a future where justice and accountability prevail? The time for reckoning is long overdue.